We're joined here today at TMRE by Beth Comstock, former Vice Chair of GE and now author. Morning, welcome.
Morning, thanks for having me.
Congratulations on the new book, Imagine It Forward.
Thank you, it feels good to have it. It was a lot of work and I'm happy to have it out in the world now.
Great. In it you talk about the nature of change is changing. I was just wondering if you could expand on that a bit.
Yeah, well, I call it emergent change, sort of based on the principles of scientific principles of emergence, really this notion that change is just happening all over and it forms new patterns and it kind of surprises us more often. And more things are emerging is really the way to think about it. And I think it's just based on our hyperconnectivity, our global world. Really, it's the digitization. It's just creating more places for change to emerge, surprise, and disrupt us. And we're not ready for that. In some ways, I think the pace of change may be outpacing our ability to adapt. But we're an adaptation machine, so we should be able to figure this out.
Yeah. And you talk about one of the biggest challenges facing incumbents is the imagination gap.
Yeah.
Again, just a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, I worry in our organizations today that we're so focused on data, machine efficiency, process, optimization, really short-term thinking, that we over-index on efficiency and we don't think enough about the future. And I think it crowds out our imagination. So I'm calling it the imagination gap. And to me, that's where options for the future get stuck or die. And it's that gap, between the critical thinking and problem solving we need to figure out new problems in new ways, and that insistence on just always doing it the same old way, the way it's always been done. And we keep relying on what we did in the past to figure our way in the future, and that's kind of crazy when you think about it.
Yeah. And in terms of your experience over the years, what's the toughest situation you found yourself in, and sort of potentially a cynical leadership team, and how you've tried to overcome them, and win them over?
Well, in my book, Imagine It Forward, I try to share many of those examples. I felt it was important to chronicle the journey of a change maker, of somebody who has to drive innovation in a company, because you're constantly confronted with those difficult situations. My toughest was the last time I was at NBC, leading digital media and digital disruption in media, and it was very scary. It was the arrival of YouTube. Everybody was petrified about cats playing the piano on video. What are we going to do? We don't know how to do that. And out of it came Hulu.com that NBC and News Corp came together and formed, but it was really tough. People didn't want to change. They feared it. They fought with each other. They really, it almost became internal warfare of this team against that team. And we see that happen in too many companies where it becomes an internal battle over the way to change, as opposed to how do we come together and figure out how do we conquer what's happening outside the world.
And also in your book, you talk about how large corporations should spend about 10% of their time on new things. How do you, those businesses that are stuck in the quarterly run rate chase, how do you convince them to do that?
Yeah, I don't know how businesses cannot have two paths, and very few do, but I think every business needs core innovation and core operations, clearly. Things at scale that need to keep going well. But you also need to make room for not only what's new, but what's next. And I love that portfolio approach of being able to see that, at the very least, have two tracks in your organization. Your core and the kind of next and new. They're measured differently, capital's allocated differently, people, customers, all are very different. Investors rarely ask for that, so I think that's the first place you would start as a leader of a team, is saying this is how we're setting up our company. There's the now and the tomorrow, today and tomorrow. We want to be held accountable for both, but we're going to do them in different ways. We're going to be transparent. We're going to test and learn in the new a lot more than we're going to test and learn in the established. Profitability is going to come in the established. Profitability is still elusive in the what's next and new, because we're still vetting and validating that there's a model. You're testing more things faster. It doesn't need to cost a lot of money, so investors should like that. But it does require, I think, different ways of measuring, allocating, and in sort of empowering people in that case.
And I was very taken in your keynote just now about how great researchers tell great stories, just in terms of the power of storytelling to help win teams over.
I believe story is everything. I think that's, as I sort of reflected in writing the book, one of my key themes is just the power of story. It's what's propelled me through my career. One of my things is I'm a storyteller, and I see time and again as somebody in innovation, who saw people's ideas often not take root, not because they weren't good ideas, but they couldn't tell what the idea was, what the impact was, why it's relevant. You get funding because somebody says, I see this. I see that future you're making. I want to be part of that. I want to come work with you. And so if you can't tell it, how can you ever sell it? And so I think research needs to be tethered to a really good story. It's about a vision. It's the mission you're encouraging people to go after, not just the data.
Great, great. One final question. If you could just give one piece of advice to large corporates struggling with the pace of change, what would that one piece of advice be to that leadership team?
Well, I think one, you don't control it. So get over the illusion that you control change. You have to get out in the world. You have to go see for yourself where change is happening. You have to invite a lot of external forces, really open yourself up to change. You cannot control it. But what you can do is meet it early, get ready for it, try your own methods. But the more you're convinced you're going to control that, the more it's going to catch up on you.
Great, brilliant. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Nice talking to you. Thanks a lot.
Good.